An Oklahoma man facing nearly 8 decades in prison for the brutal sexual and physical abuse of 2 teenagers is instead walking free. 18-year-old Jesse Butler admitted to committing these horrific crimes against his 2 former girlfriends while he was also still a minor. He pleaded no contest to his 10 felony charges. This is body cam video of his arrest. It was just released, where his mother calls the arrest of her son, quote, an awful experience for a child.
Right now, you do have to come with us, and I do have to put you in handcuffs. So turn around for me.
You have to put him in handcuffs?
I know.
Yeah, I'm going to have to cover transport somebody and keep him in custody.
You know we're going to win this. It's okay. Dad's on his way. We're coming to get you, okay? Stay strong, okay? Say your prayers. Awful experience for a child.
Well, protests have erupted, outrage at what this means for Butler's victims. Butler was initially charged as an adult, but in a stunning turn of events, that status was reverted back to being considered a so-called youthful offender because it happened while he was under the age of 18. So that means, in spite of his 78-year prison sentence, he is walking free, tasked with completing community service, counseling. He has a curfew. But by his next birthday, he could have his entire criminal record expunged, meaning he will never have to register as a sex offender. So here to break it down, I'd like to welcome in Oklahoma Attorney James Wirth. James, thank you so much for giving us some of your time.
Thank you.
This sounds pretty unbelievable. There have been massive protests there in Oklahoma, after a judge allowed Butler to avoid that 78 years in prison. Explain what happened here.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about how the system works. Anytime we're talking about charging a minor of a crime when they were a minor at the time they committed it, there's protections for that individual as well as protections for the victim and the public at large. The first interesting thing here regarding some concerns that maybe that there was a sweet deal that was done is that the prosecutor under Oklahoma law, this is the only offense, rape in the first degree is the only offense where the prosecutor can decide whether to initially charge it as an adult or as a youthful offender. And in this case, they did decide to initially charge it as an adult. But that does give the defendant the right then to file for what we call reverse certification to be treated as either a youthful offender or as a juvenile. And they filed that motion. At that point, they can request a report that a youthful offender study is done. As part of that, there's a psychological evaluation, and there's 6 different factors that they look into when the court decides, based on Oklahoma law, whether they should be treated as a youthful offender or not. And that's based on the age and maturity of the defendant, the nature and the seriousness of the crime, the prior record history of the defendant, the home environment and social background, the amenability to rehabilitation. That is a big one. If they find that the defendant, the minor, is not going to be amenable to treatment, not going to be something that they can benefit from, they can resolve the concerns, then they're not going to be a good candidate for a youthful offender program. And lastly, and most importantly perhaps, is public safety. They do look into public safety and whether they believe that treatment with the Office of Juvenile Affairs and going through a program there is going to protect the public sufficiently. Obviously, there's a lot of facts in this case that are not available to the public. We don't have the youthful offender study. We don't have the psychological evaluation. We don't have all the police reports. The people that do have all of that information would be the defense, the prosecutor, the judge, and the Office of Juvenile Affairs. And they're the ones that went in there and they actually came to an agreement in this case, and we don't necessarily know why, but this occurred back in July, way before there was any outrage, way before there was any 78-year sentence. This occurred all before that. On the motion to reverse certify as a youthful offender, there was an agreement between the prosecutor and the defense that was accepted by the judge based on the report from OJA that this defendant should be treated as a youthful offender. Subsequently, and as normally done in a youthful offender case, you've got 2 different potential sentences. You've got the adult sentence if they don't properly complete the program, in which case they can be blended into an adult sentence or bridged to an adult sentence. That's the 78 years here. But I want to make sure everybody understands that that 78-year sentence was determined already knowing that he was going to be treated as a youthful offender. Generally, that's done as to have a huge, heavy sentence hanging over his head to put him in a position where he must be fully compliant, that he knows the seriousness of it. And again, that's regarding all youthful offenders, not necessarily this case. so that the consequences are there. And if he screws up, does not complete it, or even if he does things well, but the court ultimately determines when the juvenile charge for the youthful offender loses jurisdiction before the age of 19, at that point, they have to decide whether he's going to be bridged into that adult sentence of the 78 years. So that's
all right. So James,
sentence,
with that 78-year sentence, though, is it possible that he will not have to serve any time in prison?
yeah, theoretically, that is possible. Right now, he's within the control of OJA going through rehabilitation plan. And at some point, that's going to come to an end because the court loses jurisdiction at 19. And then the court has to make the tough decision for a youthful offender on whether they've received sufficient rehabilitation and they're not a danger to the public, or whether to bridge them into an adult sentence, which could have him serving that 78 years.
Well, yeah, and I want to ask you, look, we're running out of time, but Butler's father is the former director of football operations at Oklahoma State University. We know that Oklahoma is a state where football is huge. Critics say that he's being given preferential treatment because of that, saying that the justice system is failing the victims in this case. What is your take?
Yeah, I mean, given the severity of the allegations, I can certainly understand that concern. Without knowing what's in all of the reports, it would be difficult to say. What I can say regarding favorable treatment is that the DA elected to file this as an adult, not a youthful offender, but then agreed that it should be treated as a youthful offender. I can also note that the judge, just in the way that they pronounced it, what the judge has said is that the court proceeds within the dictates of the Oklahoma Youthful Offenders Act. That seems to indicate either they were concerned that there could be some blowback and that they were wanting everyone to know I'm operating within the law here, or that could be the judge indicating my hands are a little bit tied here based on Oklahoma law because this person was 16 and a half or so when the crimes were committed. I'm a little bit tied under the law based on the facts to go with the youthful offender program.
All right, yeah, and so for now, though, Butler is walking free. All right, Attorney James Wirth, based there in Oklahoma, thank you so much for your time.